is the common.
Significant part of comedic history, from what I understand. That
Yeah, it really is. I'm wanting to get to this story for a while. Obviously, Freddie Prinze. That's December 1973. The Tonight Show. He killed. It was just the excerpt at the end there that Eric was playing of Freddie Prinze's routine.
And if it's not there, look on Rumble or Locals, and
it's going to disappear, and it's not our fault. But we tried. Mm-hmm. You could find it on YouTube anyway. You could go find it yourself. The performance by Freddie Prinze is important because he's the first young comic to ever be waved over to the couch by Johnny Carson. And there will be others waved over to the couch, but many will not. Many will bomb on the show, and many will, make their careers. Freddie Prinze makes his career by the Tonight Show. He had been on the Jack Paar show a couple of months before, one of the last episodes of the Jack Paar show. And then I guess maybe they'd seen him on there, but he was already doing stand-up by that point in New York as Johnny Carson had said, a Catch a Rising Star, which was owned by Rick Newman and kind of run by David Brenner. There's Catch on the Upper East Side. Richard Lewis made his bones there. A lot of people made their bones there as opposed to the Improv. There were two schools in New York. There was the Improv and there was Catch a Rising Star. Catch a Rising Star didn't go to that much because it was on the East Side, the Upper East Side. The Improv being on the West Side was much more of a place I went to. But when they came out here, it was the Comedy Store, but that's later in the story. But he made his bones very early at Catch. And that Puerto Rican thing that he did, that bit killed. And you look at it now and you say it's kind of jaded, but he is the first real ethnic comedian in America. Nobody had ever done this. Later on, there'll be Johnny Yoon, who's a Korean comic. There'll be Yakov Smirnoff, the Russian. There'll be others who follow him. And there's, obviously black comics all through American history. And if you wanted to see the history of that, you can see my documentary on HBO called Mo Funny Black Comedy in America, which I did in 1993. 90-minute doc on the history of African American comedy. So that goes back pre-Civil War, but Puerto Ricans just got here, so that was relatively new. And he's kind of a New Yorican, which is a special type of Puerto Rican raised in New York. He claims to be a Hungarican. That's part of his act. That is,
he's half Hungarian, right? His father's Hungarian, his mom's
half Hungarian and half Puerto Rican. Saying his father was a gypsy, his mother was a Puerto Rican. They met on a subway, picking each other's pockets. Funny, but not true. But I don't give him any. I don't dispel anything he did for the sake of comedy. I mean, many have done that. I mean, his real name is Frederick Prinze. With an umlaut over the U for you German folks, German aficionados in Deutschland. Frederick Prinze is not half Hungarian and half Puerto Rican. His father was a German Jew, and he's half Jewish and half Puerto Rican, not unlike Geraldo Rivera, who became a very close friend of his. Geraldo Rivera, his mother was Jewish, father was Puerto Rican, was bar mitzvahed. Freddie was not bar mitzvahed, and his mother is Puerto Rican. His father was Jewish. His father, interestingly enough, had a previous wife, and they had a swimming pool in the backyard, and his father got busy doing something, and his daughter drowned in the pool, and he never forgave himself. He got divorced over it and remarried and had Freddie Prinze with the Puerto Rican Maria woman who was Freddie's mother. There's a picture of Maria Prinze, Freddie's mother, or Prinze actually. Grew up in Washington Heights, and he claimed it was a barrio type neighborhood. Washington Heights was a mixed neighborhood. It was not Puerto Rican. Every nationality lived in Washington Heights, including him. and he was known as Fat Freddie back then because he was a tubby little Puerto Rican, half Jew, I guess, a German Jew. But so he got beat up all the time. He had jokes where there's a little tubby version. I was kind of like that too. My mother used to take me to the what's it called when you have chubby clothing? There was a type of a size. There was a
big boy or something. Well,
not big. No. It wasn't big boy. It was just like there was like a chubby size or something. It was very embarrassing. But anyway, so Freddie had that. And his mother used to give him $1.
Husky.
That's Husky. It. Thank you. The Husky. He was a Husky. And it might be him about 12 or 13 years of age here with his mom. But he made a joke about you never get beat up if you get robbed and you have money. You only get beat up in the Bronx if you don't have money. Then they beat the crap out of you. And so his mother gave him $1 every day to take to school. So when he got robbed, he had $1. And his tormentor, I forget the guy's name, this black kid, wasn't there in school one day, so Freddie spent the $1, and the black kid called up his mother and said Freddie spent the $1. So he went home and got smacked around by his mother for spending the $1 that she gave him for the black kid to rob him. I mean, there's some amazing material from Freddie Prinze, people, and he had a black friend named Nat, trumpet player, kind of a Miles Davis type who hated everyone. And he learned he was brought into a black gang, nonviolent gang, just these kind of a social club kind of gang in Washington Heights by Nat. And not that they did any violent things, but some of them did. And he claims he didn't, but who knows with what we've learned from people like Mike Tyson and others who, grew up in a violent situation. But Freddie Prinze, to avoid getting beaten up repeatedly, started to become funny and tell jokes to avoid the beatings that would come for a tubby kid in that neighborhood. And he used to do a bit about his landlord, Mr. Rivera, who would never fix anything for 20 years, but had the keys to your apartment in case he needed money or a TV. Which is kind of funny. And like, hey, man, I'm here to, what you call me for? He goes, well, we got a hole in the roof. We could see daylight. He goes, so what? The guy upstairs isn't complaining that he's falling through the floor. What is your problem? I mean, really, really original stuff. And like, almost like a Puerto Rican Lenny Bruce. Nowhere near the Lenny thing, but people said that. Geraldo Rivera said it. Others said it because there was really nothing to compare him to except for Lenny. Because he did do these routines that had.
What was he like? 18, 19 though? So I mean, he was so young.
No. Well, he starts doing it at 16. I mean, he goes to. It's kind of funny because his mother, because he's fat, sends him or allows him to apply, which you have to do, to LaGuardia High School for the Performing Arts to study ballet. Here's some of his classmates studying ballet in a movie called Fame, directed by Alan Parker. This is the school, LaGuardia for the Performing Arts, is, of course, the Fame School near Lincoln Center in New York. And this is from the movie Fame, directed by the British director Alan Parker, who will later go on to direct Midnight Express and Angel Heart, Mississippi Burning. Excuse me?
Pink Floyd The Wall.
Oh, Pink Floyd The Wall. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so he goes to school there ostensibly to study ballet, but he gets into acting also, and he gets into comedy. And there's a character in the movie that's, according to Freddie, roughly based on him in the movie Fame. So if you want to see that, there's a couple of other movies. Can You Hear the Laughter, which is a really bad biopic on Freddie Prinze. And there's also, he does a crime film, a TV movie called $1 Million Heist, which he did like as a network film. One of those. Yeah, here it is. It's all of them. All of the people in the movie are dressing as women. For the heist, it's kind of interesting. They're robbing a Chicago Transit Authority money depot for the movie in Chicago. He begins to take acting lessons. When he becomes famous, he wants to become a real actor, as many of them do, but it's really hard for a comic to cross over. Although those who had training were able to cross over, like if you went to Juilliard, like Robin Williams, you were able to cross over, and Robin Williams was a trained actor. And in fact, you could see the training even in the early footage of Freddie Prinze, how calm he is on stage, how settled he is on stage, how his demeanor is professional on stage. He's not twitching. He's not nervous. He's really calm. Now, keep in mind, this is a guy who's 6'2.5", 195 with a black belt in karate. Okay. This is a guy trained with Bruce Lee's trainer, Eric, because he wanted to be able to defend himself, but he was a big dude. I mean, this was his father was huge too.
So that's how he did. So he was like that chunky kid or husky kid. And as soon as his growth,
he shot up.
He started to look like that.
Right. And he begins to play drums at LaGuardia also and puts bands together. He really is a great drummer. There's some footage I was looking at the other day where he goes on the Mike Douglas show, which was a talk show out of Philadelphia in the afternoon. Mike Douglas was a former lounge singer, a big band singer, and he had a talk show in the 70s, a very good talk show. And Mike Douglas had on like John Lennon and Yoko. He had a lot of incredibly amazing guests, but he had on Freddie Prinze and he had on Buddy Rich, the legendary jazz drummer. And they had like a drum off live on the show. And there's a little photo of it. Yeah, this is as before they started. Buddy Rich on the left, Freddie Prinze there.
Actually, it's video of it.
Oh, there is. Oh, let's take a look.
All right, I'm ready when you are. I'm ready when you are. Ready?
Oh, yeah, 40 words.
Anyway.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's a legendary Buddy Rich, and Freddie's keeping up with him. I once went to my father was a big band jazz drummer, and I once went to Buddy's place for New Year's Eve in New York. He opened up his own jazz club at one point, and the people were sitting there, and they had champagne, and it was, there was whatever it was, $200 a night to get in back then, whatever it was for New Year's Eve, And Buddy Rich comes out, takes a look at the audience, and tells them to go F themselves, and doesn't come out. He had a lot of attitude. Let me just put it this way.
Oh, famously.
He was a nasty, nasty, nasty man. But
isn't there a recording of him somewhere where he was cussing out the entire band and crew on the bus for 8 minutes with them?
Yeah. And in his own club, he would do that to the patrons. Like nobody did anything wrong. They were just talking. And the show he's probably a psycho drunk or something. But anyway, but incredible jazz drummer, Buddy Rich. And Freddie was able to maintain some sort of pace with him. And he could have been a jazz drummer if he went on, but he's also an incredible singer. And he ends up being on Tony Orlando and Dawn's album as a background singer. He becomes friends with Tony Orlando. They kind of look alike, and they would play off this duality of their two looks, Tony Orlando and Freddie Prinze. But he was a great singer also. He was able to sing at the level of album quality background singing of all things. Yeah. I don't know if you have a picture of him and Tony Orlando, but Tony Orlando will come into his life a little bit later on. But anyway, so because of the success of the Tonight Show, now keep in mind the Tonight Show is on NBC. By September of the following year, 1974, he will have a pilot put on to NBC called Chico and the Man. Chico and the Man, based in LA, based in Boyle Heights. He plays a Mexican American named Chico Rodriguez, and the man is Jack Albertson, and Jack Albertson plays Ed Brown on this thing, owns a garage, and Chico Rodriguez comes and works with him in this rundown garage in East LA. Now, this had never been done before. This is really, ahead of its time to base this show, this Latino-based show in Los Angeles, in East LA, on NBC in prime time, Eric. However, Freddie Prinze is so big and so hot that the show goes to #1 immediately. And it doesn't really move that needle for years. It becomes one of the biggest shows in NBC comic history up until Seinfeld and Friends, I think.
Oh, wow.
Two bigger numbers. Yeah, there's Tony Orlando on the left. I think he came on the show a couple of times and did cameos. That might be from the show. But yeah, Freddie Prinze on the right, Tony Orlando on the left. But anyway, so Jack Albertson is brought into the show. Della Reese, the legendary black actress and singer Della Reese, is brought in. And another black actor named Scatman Crothers is brought into the show. So they've got this ethnic cast. This has never been done before. There might be some elements of ethnicity in TV, but this is a full-on, ethnic comedy that will later, you will see the Jeffersons have it around that time. You will see Good Times with J.J. Walker. J.J. Walker becomes a very close friend of Freddie Prinze. A lot of Freddie Prinze's friends are black, J.J. Walker being one of them. They will be running buddies together. He also there's J.J. Dynamite from Good Times, as many people might remember. J.J. was a stand-up comic also, and hits it big with his own TV show. But Della Reese, you may remember from Touched by an Angel.
Night Court, right?
Tess, Touched by an Angel. A lot of shows. I think she passed away in 2017 finally, but a black icon. But Scatman Crothers, maybe the one I remember Scatman Crothers from is the Shining. And yeah. He was a famous scat singer. That's where jazz scat singer. That's where he got the name Scatman Crothers from his scat singing. And also One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He was in. The guy worked, in big productions. But Chico and the Man runs from 1974 to 1977. And is that Scatman Crothers?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's great. That's fantastic. So anyway, the show, they hire to do the intro for the show, a song called Chico and the Man by Jose Feliciano, the famous blind Mexican singer who did the cover of the Doors' Light My Fire, played national anthems at sporting events, brilliant singer-songwriter, blind, and he does the song Chico and the Man, which becomes a hit just as the theme song to the show, Eric. So everything about this thing is literally going through the roof. The show itself has great writing. The producer is Comack, I think is Jimmy Comack, top ranked producer. The writing is good, and he's the star of this show, and he's a good looking guy. And what happens? He starts to party, and women love this guy. He is enjoying his new fame with a #1 show at the age of 22. 21, 20, 21, 22. It's crazy. He comes in 18 on the Tonight Show, and he's already a catch at 16 in New York, working with David Brenner, who takes him under his wing and tries to teach. I don't know if people remember David Brenner out of Philadelphia. Great stand-up comic. On the right is a guy named Rick Newman. Now, Rick Newman was the owner of Catch a Rising Star, and I knew Rick Newman. And this is getting off the beaten path, but I went to Montreal for a couple of times every year for the Montreal Comedy Festival to try to find new talent after I produced a bunch of HBO specials. I didn't know Rick Newman, but he apparently knew me. And he came up to me and introduced himself. And he said, I got to tell you a funny story. I go, what is it? He goes, I hired your brother. I go, what? He goes, yeah, he said he was your brother. And I said to myself, how far could the apple fall from the tree? And I said, in his case, pretty far, bro. So he hired my brother and he left him there late at night in the office. And he gets a bill at the end of the month for like $4,000 for 1-800 sex phone calls that my brother was obviously making nonstop all night on this guy's office phone, and also calling Trump's girlfriend at the time. What's his name? What's her name? I think. I
forgot her name.
Yeah. Anyway, so my brother's running up these huge bills.
Marla Maples?
Yes, he's calling Marla Maples, trying to become her manager, of all things. This maniac brother. So Rick Newman confronts my brother with the bill. He denies everything, the sex phone, everything. He denies it all. And he has to fire him. So he told me this whole story. I didn't even know this happened. But anyway, that's my experience with Rick Newman. Great guy, top-notch guy. He ran Catch a Rising Star, a top-notch comedy club. But when he comes out to L.A., he begins to go to the Comedy Store over here on Sunset and by Laurel Canyon. And he begins to work there and take off at the Comedy Store. Mitzi Shore, Pauly Shore's mother's place. I think the husband was Sammy Shore as an actor.
Yeah, and he bought it kind of just as an investment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really give too much of a damn about it, and she sort of took it on as her project, from what I understand.
Right. So Freddie Prinze begins to get into a new drug that's real. Well, the cocaine thing was not new, but I mean, he really gets into cocaine. But his real drug of choice is Quaaludes, and they're not even illegal yet. So he gets his psychiatrist to prescribe something like 100 300 milligram tablets for each prescription, some insane amount. And he's just using them like vitamin pills, and they're very powerful. And he gets arrested for driving under the influence of Quaaludes, which is kind of weird as an arrest. And he starts, putting this into his routine. And he begins to date people like Pam Grier, Foxy Brown, if people remember Pam Grier, even from the Tarantino movie. They might remember her later in life. Absolutely stunning black woman. There he is with Pam Grier. He begins to do these celebrity roasts, like the roast of Muhammad Ali. All these Sammy Davis Jr. roasts. People remember these roasts. He starts to date an obscure woman who's about 14 years older than him, who's about 34 or 32 at the time, named Raquel Welch.
And she just passed away recently.
Yeah. Here's Raquel Welch. I think that's from Kansas City Bomber. That outfit she's wearing is one of the team's uniforms. But look at that. My old David Pecker, the old National Enquirer. Look, new vaccine saves 50% of terminal cancer victims. There's a picture of Freddie with Raquel Welch. He also, he does the inaugural ball of Jimmy Carter's inauguration, Eric, as a comic. This is huge stuff. Doing ethnic humor, that routine of the Puerto Rican astronaut and everything, and his moniker, his phrase, "Not my job, man," or then it becomes, they change that to looking good on the show, because there becomes like an ethnic problem of laziness. So dig this. So he's playing Chico Rodriguez on the show, and the backstory on Chico Rodriguez is that he's got a Silver Star in Vietnam from fighting in Vietnam, and Ed Brown fought in World War II, and Ed Brown is the white racist who is the last white guy in the Boyle Heights neighborhood. So he's constantly complaining about the gentrification of the neighborhood and Latinos moving in. That's the show. It's like All in the Family. But there's a lot more ethnic people in this, because Ed Brown is like the one white guy. There's one with Rich Little, the impersonator, that's absolutely brilliant. If anybody could find the Rich Little episode, Rich Little shows up as an art director who wants to put on an art show in the neighborhood, or to have a wall painted with a mural in the barrio, and he stutters. And Rich Little is just stuttering nonstop. And they said, it's really, like so politically incorrect, this show. He's stuttering, and the only way he can not stutter is to do an impersonation of celebrities, allowing Rich Little. It's brilliant, allowing Rich Little to do Nixon, to do John Wayne, and do everyone, and then go back to the stuttering. I mean, it's one of the best episodes of all time. Later on, he calls up people on the phone to help Chico get out of a mess as a celebrity voice. I mean, it's really hip, very hip. And so anyway, it's so hip that people begin to complain that Freddie Prinze is not a Mexican. And he gets a boycott by the Mexican community in LA, who begin to, this is unbelievable, begin to picket the show, NBC in Burbank, with pickets surrounding the building saying it's discrimination against Mexicans, even though the guy's Puerto Rican. He's playing a Mexican American, and
wrong Latino group,
right? And this, keep in mind, this is so ahead of the curve. I mean, they're protesting in 1975. It's not that they don't even have anybody on TV other than Topo Gigio and Ricky Arnaz, who's Cuban, for Christ's sake. You know, I don't know what Ricky Arnaz is playing a Cuban, so maybe that's okay. But they accuse Freddie Prinze of cultural assimilation, to get to the point, and he takes it pretty hard. He doesn't know what to do about it other than to tell them to go F themselves. And if you listen to the show, he says Latino all the time. He doesn't say Mexican. He doesn't say Puerto Rican. He does say, I'm a Puerto Rican. But when he talks in general terms in the show, he says Latino culture. You know what I mean? He identifies himself as, and it's really interesting what they do, because the writing is really sharp on the show. But nevertheless, they begin to get picketed by the La Raza people out here, and they're still here now. The La Raza people are now 75 years old, but still doing their La Raza Marxist stuff. So anyway, so Carl Prutzel, Frederick Carl Prutzel, as his real name is accused of cultural appropriation, and he fights this off and starts to, the show just goes gangbusters, but he begins to get depressed and do like real dickish things. Like Jimmy Walker would talk about how he would go to the newsstand on Cahuenga over here, the world newsstand with all the magazines, and he would stand in front of covers of magazines with him on it, as if he was just browsing some magazines, until people recognized him. And then he would autograph the magazine like he was just standing by, just happened to be walking by. And okay, so I'll just tell you this story. It's a great JJ Walker story. Freddie Prinze is such a narcissist, which he really is, Eric. Another guy begins to rise to fame with another show, and he begins to get covers of magazines at the same time. And he begins to get women idolizing him at the same time as Freddie Prinze is on the cover. And that is a show called Welcome Back, Kotter, with a new star named John Travolta. And he flips, he flips out, Freddie Prinze. He says, F this guy. Who is this guy? Trying to take my fame. I'm Freddie Prinze. And he says, let's go get him. And Walker's going, what? And they go to the Big Five Sports, which is still there. I just drove by the other day, San Vicente and Wilshire. They go to Big Five Sports and they get a crossbow. He buys a crossbow, and they go to the apartment of John Travolta on Santa Monica Boulevard, and they fire 3 arrows into his door. He's not home. They ring the bell, and Walker's trying to talk him out of this, but Freddie Prinze won't have it. He doesn't know who Travolta is. He's not a star yet. He's on the cover of these magazines. And the police show up, and this, you can actually see the police report, which is available, I think, on somewhere on TMZ or somewhere. But in the police report, there's a photo of the 3 arrows in John Travolta's door. And the police report says, approaching is at 2100 Santa Monica Boulevard, 3 arrows in complainant's door, doesn't know how they got there, was worried about his own safety. So this is not a prank. This is an infuriated Freddie Prinze who doesn't want anyone. Yeah, it's a little different.
Was he heavy on the drugs at the time? too?
Yeah.
Or
Yes, this is where it begins to get crazy. So he begins to get heavily into cocaine, heavily into drinking, and heavily into Quaaludes. And as I said, he's arrested for driving while under the influence of Quaaludes. He's got a manager named Dusty Snyder. Marvin Snyder was his manager. He had fired, I remember this. He had fired his first manager and didn't pay him. And he was legally correct. The manager is suing him. And Dusty Snyder says, the guy's right. He's going to win. He said, I'm your new manager, and you may do it to me for all I know. But that guy had a ironclad contract. You burn the guy, which happens quite a bit. And the guy's suing him for millions that he owes him. And he's spending money left and right, Eric, buying a house for his mother. He's really going nuts monetarily. I mean, he signed a $6 million contract after the third or fourth year of Chico and the Man for like $6 million in 1974 money. So what is that? 6 times that, 36 million or
that's like
something?
Seinfeld money when he was getting $1 million an episode.
Yeah. So they wanted to lock him up, artistically. So anyway, so because of the Mexican protests, like I said, they changed the thing to looking good. And, he begins to hang out with JJ Jimmy Walker, who's not that big of a drug guy, but I don't know if Barsky is either, but he begins to really spend a lot of money on drugs. And this starts to spiral him out of control. That's where he starts going downhill. And, he starts to become, like many people do, he becomes paranoid from the cocaine. You know what I mean? And he's living at place right by Richard Lewis, where Richard Lewis used to live. It's right by Hollywood, where it hits Fairfax, between Nichols Canyon and Fairfax. There's a modern luxury apartment complex there, 7777 Hollywood Boulevard, still there on Hollywood Boulevard. And he lived there. But he also had a place at the Beverly Hills Hotel Plaza on Wilshire. So he would go over there and do drugs. There's the hotel on Wilshire. Then that's still there. That was his hangout place.
Party pad or whatever.
Yeah, party pad. I don't know. I guess he would go there from the apartment, but the apartment allowed him to walk to the Comedy Store, which is why Richard Lewis lived there also, and he could walk to the Comedy Store. Although I doubt Richard Lewis ever walked anywhere, but it was in walking distance to the Comedy Store, which is right there in Fairfax and Sunset. So a lot of comics kind of lived around there. There's all these little pockets in LA, like there's the rock and roll neighborhood, which is a little further up. There's Rock and Roll Ralph's Supermarket, the Rock and Roll 7-Eleven, the Guitar Center is there. There's all these there's ethnic pockets, but there's also employment pockets in LA and Hollywood specifically, where certain types of artists live in these little pockets. And this is where the comedians lived, to get the long story short, around the Comedy Store in different apartment complexes. So that's where Freddie lived. Now, Freddie meets up with a cocktail waitress in Vegas named Catherine Cochran, who's just a straight cocktail waitress. There's a beautiful woman. He marries her in an Elvis-like ceremony in Vegas. And from that marriage will become Freddie Prinze Jr., who will later go on to be a very famous actor, as many people know, with a lot of different movies. And there's Freddie Prinze Jr., yeah.
I think he now owns part of wrestling and stuff.
Yeah, he's into the
branched out a lot.
WWE. Yeah, I didn't realize that too. I mean, I knew what you did last summer, and also some animated stuff that he did. He was married to Sarah Michelle Gellar for over 20 years, and no drugs, no scandals, no anything for the kid. I mean, there he is. I guess that may be her movie or his movie, The Grudge. But yeah, I mean, made a lot of money as an actor, and I don't know what the thing is with the World Wrestling Federation, but
I heard restaurateur too. I think he's a like behind the scenes player too, in addition to doing the
he did Scooby Doo and She's All That and Scream. Did you mention Scream?
No, but you did.
Oh yeah, okay, Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and a bunch of other spinoffs.
Well, he was a rom-com guy. He was kind of like, before Matthew McConaughey, I would say he was the top lead for all the rom-coms.
That's right. But he got out.
Yeah. But I think he kept his money and just invested it. So it seems like he's one of those that's, quietly probably worth
millions,
nine figures or better.
Right. Well, interestingly enough, so he's going to come into this story in a weird way, Freddie Prinze Jr. That's why I wanted to put him on the thumbnail that Eric made, because he is involved. Now, one of the things about Freddie Prinze Sr. is he's obsessed with Lenny Bruce, and he believes that he himself is a fraud. He begins to believe that he himself rode to stardom so quickly that he never paid his dues. And he's ridiculed by his own close friends who are working. This is true. He's ridiculed by his own crew of comedians who are still struggling to make it, telling him you suck all the time. And they're doing this half serious and half kidding, but it's half true. And this is his friends. Like, how friends will cut themselves.
Ballbuster.
Right. Exactly. So they're sitting around getting high. These other comics are working for years. They're not making it. They're paying more dues than Freddie did. Obviously, his looks helped. His the newness of the act helped. The fact that he went to LaGuardia for the School for the Performing Arts helped. A lot of it helped. But the point of it is he rose so quickly that he really didn't pay heavy dues. And they ride him for that unmercifully, and he spirals into a black hole over this. Now, he worships Lenny Bruce, and he's nowhere near what Lenny was, because Lenny was a cultural icon. We'll eventually do an episode on Lenny Bruce, and you'll see the difference. Freddie had some sort of ethnic, social satire jokes, but nowhere near the things that Lenny did, where Lenny would go on for an hour. Free form. I mean, he couldn't touch this in a million years. And Carlin, of course, was meticulous in writing and memorizing each thing. So he wasn't very Lenny-esque in his world and style. Lenny was his own thing, but Lenny also multiculturally, involving Yiddish culture, Jewish culture, American culture, and pop culture, was multicultural in his delivery, which is kind of like Freddie Prinze in that regard also. So there are a lot of similarities, but there's a big difference in stature and quality. And
he could have gotten there. He was kind of young.
Right. No,
for
absolutely.
20 years, he might have been Lenny Bruce.
No doubt about it. But at the age of 20, he's in a depression, spiraling with drugs and alcohol. Lenny was not at that age doing that. Lenny didn't do it 2 years later. However, Freddie begins to spiral out of control. Now, this is where my own personal stories can come involved into here, because nobody knows this stuff. He was so obsessed that he went out with Kitty Bruce, who was Lenny's daughter. And there's a shot of Kitty later on in life. Kitty became an addict herself. She now runs a women's recovery center in the Midwest somewhere. I forget where it is, maybe in Ohio. Richard Lewis knows. He donates some money to her. It's a women's house, recovery house, sober house. But around that time, she was about 20 years old, and he was so obsessed with Lenny that he didn't really care about Kitty Bruce. He could have had any girl in Hollywood, which he did. Sure. But because of his obsession with Lenny Bruce, Leonard Alfred Schneider from Belmore, Long Island, he literally had a leaf from Lenny Bruce's tree in his wallet. That he kept in his wallet, a leaf that fell off the tree in front of his house. Okay. That's how crazy this obsession was with Lenny. And people did reference him as being the next Lenny Bruce, or Lenny Bruce-esque. And you see Geraldo does it. They all do it, because they don't know who to compare him to. And he doesn't knock it down, but he doesn't embrace it. He's kind of like, it's kind of awkward for him to hear it. You know what I mean? But he doesn't go either way on it. And he says, I'm just Freddie Prinze. I'm not Lenny Bruce. What are you going to say, Eric? They're comparing you to Babe Ruth or something, and you just go, no, I'm not Babe Ruth. I'm just Mickey Mantle. You know what I mean? What are you
kind of like Elliott Smith, isn't it? And
yeah,
Bob Dylan.
Yeah. But this was a lot more. This was on live TV, doing it, on the Tonight Show and everything. He becomes the host of the Tonight Show, for Christ's sake. He fills in for Johnny Carson and becomes the host. Yeah. I mean, he is freaking huge. And I mean, I don't even know what to compare it to today in terms of comedy. I hate
Pryor at his peak.
No, but I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
today, who would be somebody like that?
I don't know if there is anybody right now.
Right. Yeah, there probably isn't. Yeah, Ricky
No.
Gervais I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's
Anyway, so he has
yeah.
a roommate. He has a roommate at one point before he gets to this point. He has a roommate, some guy who teaches him how to drive. Right now, this roommate is just starting his own comic career. He is nowhere, and this guy is his roommate, and he teaches him how to drive in Hollywood, gets him his driver's license and shit. And this guy will later, 25 years later, become the host of the Tonight Show, and his name is Jay Leno.
I was gonna say it's a Jay Leno, damn it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I just was listening to Jay Leno recently. He wrote for J.J. Walker.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Dave Letterman did too. And
that's right.
Byron
Allen.
That those
three.
See,
Walker is not funny. Walker is another actor turned comic. But what Walker does is he surrounds himself and pays these cats to be his crew, right? So they can write jokes for him. And they do. And that's how Walker makes his bones and also is able to have an act. Freddie, kind of wings it, and he's funny, but you could see he repeats the same material that he's got, that Puerto Rican astronaut thing, and he is not paying for jokes, and he's not writing jokes. So it's both of these are not happening, and he's running out of material too. But he's doing celebrity roasts. He's doing the Muhammad Ali roast, the Sammy Davis Jr. roast. Those televised roasts, Eric. Where you get the Dean Martin show roasts. He's doing all of those, and it's easy for him to do those things. You know what I mean? He does an album at Live at Mr. Kelly's in Chicago, the only comedy album he ever did. It's a great album, but it's the same material, and he's good. He's smooth as silk. I mean, the cat's smooth, but it's the same material. He's not really developing new stuff. Of course, his life is not going to go too long, so we don't know what can happen. So you can't really judge that, because some guys will milk material for a number of years before they have to turn it over and use new material. And I mean, it costs a lot of money to buy a new act. I mean, it could be as much as $1 million to buy a new act and retire an act. There's a lot of inside comedy stuff that people don't realize how the system works out here or in New York. There are guys who sell jokes outside the Comedy Store for $20 for crack. Okay, just so you know, people. I've had friends who are crackheads, who are comedy writers, who will stand outside the Improv or the Comedy Store here and sell jokes for $20 to top level comics, even like the Dice Man, or I mean, I know guys who sold jokes to Dice for $20, just to buy a piece of crack. It's a dark, dark business. Everybody thinks it's all rainbows and unicorns. It's not. It's extremely dark, and that's why you have guys like Sam Kinison, and that's why you have. I mean, Dice is never used drugs or alcohol, so Dice avoided that. But a lot of these guys will die later, and Freddie is the first guy to really be a casualty in the comedy world. There are others who die in the rock world in the late 60s that we're aware of. But in comedy, this didn't really happen. Freddie Prinze is the first casualty in the comedy world, besides, obviously, Lenny Bruce.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Later than Mitch Hedberg and stuff. But
And Bill Hicks will die of cancer. But I mean, there's others who will die of drug overdoses who are comedians. But obviously, Lenny was the first casualty. Lord Buckley, you could say, drank himself to death. He had cirrhosis of the liver, and that really led to Lord Buckley's death also. So, but yeah, he worships Lenny. He goes after Kitty. Years later, I'll just digress a minute. I think it was the late 80s. I was in New York, and I look in the paper, and there's a band playing on the Upper East Side, a place I used to go to once in a while, and it's called the Kitty Bruce Band. And I went, what the fuck is this? And I go over there, and she's got a band, Kitty Bruce. And she comes outside, and I meet her, and she hugged me, and it was so great to meet Lenny Bruce's daughter. I'll never forget it as long as I live. I mean, she was so nice to me. She was so, sweet. She hugged me. She said, I completely understand. This is in between sets of a show. She then goes back in and does another set as a rock singer, for this band. Anyway, so J.J. Walker talks about this situation with Freddie, where he would be all alone at night, and he'd call people up saying, Jimmy, I'm really lonely. I'm going to kill myself. Or off myself. And I'm sad. I'm drinking. I'm using. I'm blah, blah, blah. Can you please come over? And he'd go, Freddie, it's 4:30 in the morning. And he's going, man, you got to come over. I'm so lonely. I just can't live anymore. I can't go on. So he said, all right. So he puts on his pants. He drives over to either the Wilshire Hotel or the 7777 on Hollywood. And he gets there, and there's 14 people in the apartment. He did it to 14 people. And he would do this all the time. He would he would be alone, and he didn't want to be alone. So he'd call up 8 to 15 people and say he's going to do something to himself, self-harm, and they would reluctantly come over and they'd have a party. So, and then he would do things like he had a woman assistant. I forget her name, but she put it this way: he got a gun. Okay, and he got this gun either with Walker. There's a copy of the gun. It's a copy of kind of the James Bond gun, but he got a replica of it. That's the Walter PK, I guess. And he would brandish this gun all the time, Eric, in a mock, or maybe not mock, Russian roulette scenario with his friends, if you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like the guy who does this all the time, making believe he's going to do something, and who knows?
Paranoia running strong with that one.
Right. But he may just be. Most of the times, he was just effing with them. You know what I mean? Like that. He was a prankster. He was a dick, according to his friends. He was annoying as all fuck. He was a narcissist. He was, blah blah blah. He had problems. Let me just put it that way. And on one particular night, he calls up his manager, this guy Marvin, Dusty Marvin Snyder, and he says, "You got to come over here. I can't take it anymore. I'm broke. I'm going to do something to myself. I'm going to harm myself." So Snyder has heard this before. So he goes over to the hotel on the Beverly Hills Plaza Hotel on Wilshire. And there's Freddie. And Freddie is playing around in room 216, which was his room. He's playing around with that thing that Eric just showed. He pulls it out from under a pillow on the couch he's sitting on, right? He pulls it out from under the pillow, and he does this to his head and pulls the whatchamacallit, and it goes off right in front of his manager. And
the manager, a witness.
Yeah. The manager's there. Yeah. And it's real. And no, you don't know when that happens if the guy intended it or not. So it's kind of like, all you could say is, the guy did it. So he's taken to the hospital. He's on life support for a number of days. His family pulls the plug on him, right? His mother comes out, father comes out. They pull the plug. He's on life support. And they have a huge funeral for him here. Everybody's there. Jay Leno, Richard Lewis. Everybody went to the funeral. And people are in shock. I mean, it's really, people are in shock. But people who know him, yeah, I think that's Tony Orlando on the left. That's Freddie's father there helping his mother in the light suit. I'm not sure who the guy is on the extreme right, but that's Forest.
Bodyguard or something.
Yeah, it's like Forest Lawn Cemetery right over here on the other side in Glendale, the other side of the hill. So anyway, everyone is in shock about this. And the mother will not accept the fact that Freddie A is broke because he was spending this money. He signed a contract for 6 years, but the contract hadn't kicked in yet. There's the mother with a photo of Freddie. I mean, she's so devastated that she's lived her career through him. But the contract is of no value because he's not alive. So NBC doesn't owe them anything. And the new contract hasn't started yet, Eric. And the old one has just coming to an end. You know what I mean? It's like the 4 years of the show are coming to an end. In fact, in 1977, when the show ends, this is really strange. They don't mention what happened to Freddie Prinze. And in the show, they say he went to Mexico on vacation, but he doesn't come back. So they hire this new kid, this new Chico, this kid. Yeah, Gabriel Melgar as a replacement to Freddie Prinze. And the fans flip out.
That's a hard job, man. Ooh.
Dude, the kid spiraled out of control, even as an adult. He works up in Sacramento today as an MRI guy, doing MRI stuff as a radiologist. But he said, yeah, this is a new Chico. The fans turned on him. He was younger, obviously, than Chico. He's supposed to be like a 12-year-old kid. Right. And the ratings just plummeted, and NBC pulled the plug. It was like a feeble attempt by NBC to try to keep this thing alive because it was the #1 show. I mean, you can't really blame NBC for trying to salvage the #1 show, but it's all based on Chico. This new Chico thing is not going to cut it. So this kid, he has his own mental problems, this kid, because of them turning on him. It ruins his life, but he gets out of the business completely. But getting back to the mother and Freddie Prinze and the wife. Remember we showed that wife, the mother of Freddie Prinze Jr.? They team up, the three of them. Now, Freddie Prinze Jr., I don't know, he's like 2 years old or something, right? The three of them go to court and they sue the insurance company. This is amazing. They sue the insurance company for the insurance money on Freddie Prinze, who, if you unalive yourself, Eric, and I say the word unalive.
For you too. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm learning. If you unalive yourself, the insurance company doesn't have to pay out. So
right.
What do they
standard?
Do? Right. Okay. So you just go, well, I mean, obviously this could have been something else, but he wrote a long unalive note. He wrote a letter, let me put it that way, explaining what he was going to do in the next day. And he carried out what he wrote in the letter, right? This goes to a jury trial here in LA, civil jury trial. And they find that he's under the influence of Quaaludes and playing with the gun. And they just say that the note is meaningless for reasons I have no understanding. And they get $250,000 out of the insurance company, right? Unbelievable, because this is an open and shut case. Obviously he's tried to do this before.
So they're saying it's by misfortune because he was on drugs?
Yes. He just accidentally wrote a note and he accidentally carried it out.
I see.
Okay.
He was well loved. Obviously, this is some jury nullification type stuff.
Right. Absolutely. So they get 250 G's, but that's not enough. 250 G's. It's 1979 250 G's, which is not bad. Multiply that by 6 or 5. Okay. So now they go back in and they sue the psychiatrist and the medical doctor for prescribing Quaaludes to him. Okay. Oh. That's right. And allowing him to get a gun is in this case. I swear to God. They sue the Freddie Prinze Jr. They bring the baby in. They bring the wife in. They bring the mother in. And they are suing this big-time Beverly Hills shrink and this big-time Beverly Hills medical doctor. And they are suing him for malpractice, right? Before it could go to trial, they both settle for $1,019,83, Eric.
Each?
$1 million total, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's you figure it's like $5 to $6 million, right? Mm-hmm. Again, him having no blame whatsoever for doing and writing what he was going to do, and faking this or trying to do this, like Elliott Smith. In a lot of ways, this is a similar story to the Elliott Smith story, which is why I wanted to do it, because did he do it by accident? Did he really do it? Did someone else do it? I don't think anybody else did it, but it's a question of, did he unalive himself accidentally or intentionally? And it's got some echoes of the Smith story, but that could have been murder in the Elliott Smith story, which it's a little bit different. But it's a celebrity spiraling out of control on drugs, too much success too soon. I mean, Della Reese gave an interview saying it's clearly an accident. He would never do it, although he tried to do it every other week. It's one of those things, where he faked it one time just to torture people. He fired off the gun in his apartment, and he was laying on the floor, and the assistant ran in, and he went, ha, 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 gotcha, doing that kind of stuff, Eric.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Right. That's the kind of stuff he was into.
Whew. I mean, I guess that just shows how much he was loved, because obviously I think they were saying, no, same way you said delicate and accept it. Nobody could accept anything like
Nobody
that.
Could accept it. Nobody could accept it.
And that's amazing.
He had a public, she said that Della Reese said that everyone on the show treated him as if he was 15 years old, like he was a young teenager. And not that there was anything wrong with that. He wasn't doing anything crazy on the show. They just treated him like a kid, because these were people in their 40s and 50s, Eric, who were around him. I mean, Jack Albertson had been a pool hustler. He'd been, a guy who had been a soft shoe dancer. I mean, these were veteran show business people. Scatman Crothers, Della Reese, these people had seen it all. They treated him like he was 13 or 14 years of age on the show, like a child. So they couldn't imagine, and they didn't see the dark side that I just described. He kept a wall between them and him and his dark life that he lived on the edge of Hollywood.
Wow.
So J.J. Walker saw it, but he wasn't on the show.
Sure.
These other guys who ran with him saw it, but they weren't on the show. He had his own, dark world.
Did J.J. Walker kind of spiral out of this too? I mean,
I think he's still alive.
He's still alive, but I'm just saying, career-wise, it seemed like he peaked and kind of faded.
Right. Well, he just did stand-up after his show disappeared. He wasn't able to get other shows, but you could still work as a comic in Vegas and make a fortune, sure. Which is what this guy did. And most guys do that, even Seinfeld or anybody who's had a show can still go, like Richard Lewis had one, Anything But Love, or Paul Reiser, I think, was a comic who had a show. Right. I mean, when the show's gone, you just go back to doing stand-up, I mean, Leno got the Tonight Show, but he would still go down to Huntington Beach every weekend and do stand-up. I mean, Bill Maher still does stand-up.
Leno never stopped. He famously has said that he never cashed a Tonight Show check. Right. 100% went to the bank. He's lived on his stand-up money his entire career.
Right. And he will go down there to whatever the place is, I forget, in Huntington Beach and do his stand-up act. That's what J.J. Walker was doing, and Jimmy Walker. And you have a team of writers and everything else. And that probably, Freddie was trying to become an actor. He wanted to be Marlon Brando. He got an acting coach. He begged this guy to be his acting coach and wanted to do these movies. He's not bad. I saw this thing, if anybody wants to see $1 Million Ripoff, it's a 1976 movie. It's not bad. I mean, to watch him, I mean, he's better than them, but you could see that he could do this. And in a way, we see it happen a couple of years later with Richard Pryor.
I was going to say, he reminds.
What's that?
You make me think of Robin Williams with the story, though, because Robin Williams, a lot have said, is an actor who played a comedian versus a comedian who played an actor. Is that the case here?
Well, it's in its infancy. So like he's only 20 when he's doing this, Eric. So you could, but I'm saying on camera, you could see even in this bad TV movie, he's good. You could see that if he was in a professional, he's not there yet. You know what I mean? Like Richard Pryor did a couple of little films, Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars, where he plays, plays little parts in those movies before he moves up a little bit, JoJo Dancer and some other films. You could see that Pryor, which he would have been in Blazing Saddles if he wasn't drug-addled at that point, and Mel Brooks had to pull the plug on him, being the sheriff, the black sheriff, he would have been in Blazing Saddles. But he was too high to make it. So the same thing kind of happens to Richard Pryor, but just he dragged it out a little bit further than Freddie Prinze did.
Wow, kind of sad.
It's a sad story. I mean, he dies January 29th, 1977. The trials that I was talking about, the latter one is not till 1983, the one with Freddie Prinze Jr., his mother, and the wife. Where they get $1 million settlement, and the other one I think is 79 or 80. But yeah, I mean, that crossbow story with John Travolta is worth the price of admission. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is insane.
Yeah.
Oh, we got some super chats in here. Somebody saying Freddie Prinze had access to the Zapruder film.
Oh, right. That's what I was going to tell you. He became a Zapruder film fanatic and started to show everyone the Zapruder film in his apartment. And he'd have parties over there where he just ran. I think he gets it. I don't know who gets it first, him or Geraldo. And I think he gets it from Geraldo.
I was wondering, if they're buddies.
Right, right. Because they were buddies, and Geraldo shows it on his show. And when Robert Grodin shows up and delivers the film to him, and they show it on for the first time in America, he gives a copy, I believe, to Freddie Prinze, and Freddie Prinze becomes fanatically obsessed with the JFK assassination and studies the film repeatedly all day and night.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a dot for you.
Yeah, there's a dot. Go figure that dot out, you know?
Wow, that's insane. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we have a new member with Glenda Milam.
Ah, Glenda.
And let me see. Harold, I really think your patrons would enjoy learning about Jack Curacao, CIA agent, framed and 2.5 years in prison, convicted of a felony for violating the Intelligence Identities Protection Act.
It's been covered quite a bit. His story is pretty well known. I don't know how much more you could lend to that story. You know, he went against the man, and the man stuck it to him.
Which they usually will.
Yeah.
Leslie Ewan Froster is a new member. Thank you. Good old Sparty Matt's back. Congrats on almost 87,000 subs. You guys are.
What do we have? 87,000?
86.9. Maybe we'll get to 87 today. Maybe it'll be tomorrow. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
We're slowly ticking up ticking up there, slowly but surely. Sir Lawrence, the Jewish/Irish Mount Rushmore is Harrison Ford, Ben Stiller, J.D. Salinger, and Mark. Keep up the good work.
What about Bill Maher?
Bill Maher,
Yeah.
Well, he's the reverse, right?
Bill Maher has an Irish mother, Jewish father. Yeah.
Right. So the flip.
Technically, Freddie Prinze is not Jewish, and technically, Bill Maher is not Jewish.
Right. Pasha, another stellar show, gents. This is completely expected, but never unappreciated. Keep it.
Yeah, I was watching Viva and Barnes, and he was on there. As
Yeah.
soon as the shows. I mean, I know this guy's busy. I mean, he was over on their show moments later. You know,
great to see him.
right?
Man.
And I went on I saw the Tonight Show. He was posting on the Tonight Show. He's everywhere.
Yeah. And K1 Fate contribution to the Eric Hunley Defense Fund.
Oh no, that's dark, bro. That's dark.
Thank you. Oh, Eric. Wow, amazing. And here's Otto. They're chip shotting in the crowd too. When Eric is arrested, the subs will go up.
What? They'll go up. That's funny.
Somebody's asking if you knew Mitch Hedberg. No, okay.
He was in some gap of time that I wasn't. Like was later than me. I don't know what his peak was or where he was, but I never.
He died in like 2002.
Yeah, I was
or
just
3.
thinking I wasn't around at the time or something, but you know, the Prince thing really is of interest to me because of the ethnic humor, which we're not allowed to do anymore. Let me tell you something. When you watch that Chico and the Man, it is freaking politically incorrect. I mean, wow. There's this scene I remember watching. Ed is selected to become the city council or the neighborhood council president. They want to have a council meeting about parking in the neighborhood. So he shows up and he goes, where are the drinks? Where's the alcohol? And they said, well, we've got fruit punch, coffee, and this water here. And he says, this is worse than an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, right? And they said, well, you know, you can't really drink here. And he goes, this is like Wetbacks Anonymous. What the hell am I stumbling into here? Anyway, it is really, really politically incorrect.
Worse than All in the Family, or along the same line?
No, far worse than All in the Family. Yes,
really?
Absolutely.
You know, I don't know. I kind of missed that though, because I feel like there's a certain respect for the different cultures at the time. Like they were joking hard, but it was with love.
Right. I mean, and he's the butt of a lot of their jokes. I mean, the ultimate send up comes from Chico. He always wins the debate. You know what I mean? To make a schmuck out of this guy. But I mean, it's all good natured stuff where they're showing this guy to be a bigot. And I mean, how do you show bigotry without bigotry? How do you show it? I mean, and even in the comedy vein.
Yeah, well, and
it's a great show. It really, let me tell you something. The show holds up. I mean, even though it's 50 years old, it's still quite watchable and enjoyable.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out. I actually
have to check it out. I mean, it ran as a #1 show for a reason for 4 years. You know what I mean? It is a top. I mean, it's Seinfeld? No. I mean, it changes in 25 years, the style of comedy and multi-camera shooting and the art changes, but it's up there, my friend. With the comedies of its time.
Yeah, well, it was contemporary with Good Times or
slight
overlap.
Jefferson's, Good Times.
Wow. All right, $9.99 from Heather Whatever. Thank you very much. And well, I know you have this, but that's going to be another show. Any funny Sam Kinison stories?
No, Sam, I knew. Yeah, that's a separate issue.
And that's going to be an episode too.
That's an episode by itself. I just wanted to get this Freddie Prinze thing because of the JFK worship of the JFK assassination and his ethnic humor and a lot of other little reasons. The Lenny Bruce connection to his daughter. There's some sort of resonance for me.
Okay. Gombasto sent a tip that says $20, but it's not a $20 tip. So no, I don't quite get it. It's on locals. Thank you.
Thank you.
DB Crazy Rumble Rant. Thanks, gents. Great show. I loved Chico and the Man.
Okay.
And Seymour SR. I miss those HBO young comedian shows. I do too.
Right. When HBO would break new comedians, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. It used to be great on that.
Yeah. One of them, I think, was Dice Clay broke on one of those shows, if I remember correctly.
Really? Wow. Dice is another one that was just bigger than life. I mean, stadium level comedian.
And when these guys were selling out Madison Square Garden, I mean, nobody had ever done that before. I was with both Sam and Dice on both of their Madison Square Garden nights when they started at Madison Square Garden. And it was the most insane comedy show I've ever been to in my life. Now, people have sold out big arenas since then, but at the time, in the late 80s, Dice and Kinison just ruled the earth. Nobody had ever done this before.
And Eddie Murphy got in there too.
Yeah, Murphy too. Murphy in a lot of ways is Freddie Prinze without the drugs and alcohol. Murphy basically a teetotaler and had a couple of good writers from SNL who he brought out here to LA with him. And that really helped him in the fact that he didn't do drugs and alcohol.
No, his kinks were elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to get a letter.
We'll we'll do an Eddie Murphy episode.
Nice. Patrick Washburn, 1077, no lounge act question this time. Just want to show my appreciation to AUS.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah.
Kim Olson, love the show. Well, thank you.
Oh, Kim with a Y. We met her last week.
Yes, and I think she sent an email. I might have forwarded. I don't remember. But Rockweed Girl, Mark, young man, I'd love to send you a sturdy brush, but I don't know where to send it. Just kidding. Your life sounds like pretty hair-raising. You've earned the due. Thanks again, guys. Love it.
Okay. Oh, that's the chick up in Maine, which I thought was weed, but she's into like rock collecting or something. I forget. It wasn't about weed.
It's rocks and weed. It's a rockweed.
No. I thought it was like a weed, somebody who was a pothead, but it turns out it wasn't.
Oh, okay. Right. And then Catherine Riordan with a €11.99, I think. Thank you. I love the international audience. It's just so amazing that there's folks around the world, especially when we're doing a JFK thing and it's Australia and then down the line. But wow, thank you everyone so much. See, Friday we're doing Freeform Friday.
Okay, and that's if you're not incarcerated.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, you could still do it from there. You get your iPhone, you just broadcast from inside.
Well, on that note, Joe Exotic is doing interviews from prison.
No.
He is. And apparently he charges like, I don't know if it's $170 or $270 per appearance or something like that. But yeah, if you pay, Joe Exotic can appear on your show.
No, get out.
And every so often, like every 7 minutes, or I was saying, this call is from an inmate.
That's worth the price. All right, let me do this Memphis Jug Band group, because the Memphis Jug Band was organized by singer-guitarist Willie Shade, and was born in 1898, spent most of his life in Memphis between 1927 and 1934. They recorded nearly 75 albums and consisted of a variety of local musicians. Their Bottle It Up and Go of 1932 became a blues standard of the entire decade. Shade, the leader, died in 1966. This is the Memphis Jug Band, Heroes of the Blues for today.
Awesome. And of course, Oswald has to make his appearance as we are heading out. But Friday, we may go over what's going on with me.
Oh, yeah, Friday we could talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. I didn't want to do it on this show because this
no. Right, because we'll be able to stretch it out and talk about it on Friday, unless we can't talk about it for legal reasons. I don't know. Are we restricted by something or no?
No, there's no restriction about it. I just feel like this is Freddie Prinze's show, not not Eric's drama show.
Wait, this is last call. I got to do this again. This last call for super chats, so we don't get crazy. I'm going to go to Santa Barbara after this for a couple of days and explore some Santa Barbara Untold Stories up north. But I'll be back for the Friday Untold Stories here with Hunley. But last call. Anybody want to throw down? Going through your couch, whatever you do, this is it. You got to go. Hunley's got to, talk to his lawyer, Nate, who might live in Washington.
Nate is literally, it is Nate the lawyer.
Nate the lawyer is
and Barnes is giving some advice on the side. But anyway.
What about Viva? He just said, no, I'm not going to advise you. Or
well, he's a Canadian, but I did appear on his show to break the story to get the word out bigger than here. So. Dustin Russell, a great show, Viva. Oh, wait, wrong show. Already hit button.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Dustin Russell with a funny. Oh, here's Harold. Yep. Sorry, but need to correct you. But Richard Pryor was never asked to play the sheriff. I'm sorry, but I don't know. You're correcting me. Okay. I'm sorry. Gig Young is a white guy, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. No way with a super ticker. Thank you. And Innis Fad was Mark.
No, that was orange cream seltzer with vanilla almond milk, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like a poor man's egg cream. Yeah. It's got Polar makes a vanilla cream seltzer, and if you combine it with vanilla almond milk, you literally have a vanilla egg cream. But do not, I'm patenting this, do not try to do this at home with your own stuff.
Remember, this is the award-winning egg cream maker.
Yeah, right. What is it called? I'm like a soda jerk from, who's experimented with all kinds of stuff since I was 18. So I am.
He's a professional, a highly trained jerk.
Highly trained soda jerk. Let me put it that way.
Well, everybody, we will see you on Freeform Friday, and check us out on Locals on structured.locals.com. In the interim, you might want to follow us on Twitter. I'm hoping that I don't have much to share going on.
No, but you can follow me at Lord Buckley. If I know anything about Hunley, I'll let you know, and you could join us on the JFK Book Fund through PayPal or Venmo or the Cash App. Dude, how about that book I sent you? That crazy that you found the PDF on. There's a book this morning. Robert Oswald, who's Oswald's brother, had a biography that he wrote. It's $980 on.
Or $80. It was like there's.
Well, that was on eBay. I found one on eBay for $85, but the one on Amazon was $985. So you'll see what I'm up against here with these books. But then we found a PDF, so I'm going to print out the PDF and try to go through that for an episode on Oswald's brother at some point in the next couple of weeks.
Ooh, perfect.
Good.
All right.
Thanks for the
everybody Friday. And